All right, interesting one here. Boxing News. Boxing News have tweeted the following. Moses Itauma. He wants an all-British clash with Joe Joyce potentially on the undercard of Fury versus Usyk 2. Joe could be a good fight for me. I'd take any fight. That is a fight after the Chisora fight that I actually thought maybe it would be a good time to pull the trigger on it. It's crazy to think, really, that Joe Joyce 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, 23 months ago, for all intents and purposes, really, was beating Joseph Parker in Manchester on pay per view. And now we're hearing that he could potentially, or certainly the likes of Moses Itauma, a prospect who is in his infancy, really 19 years old, is talking about him as a potential opponent. And Joyce clearly would be the away fighter, even though they're both promoted by Frank Warren. Joyce would be seen as the away fighter, and it really does show with bad matchmaking how quick like that it can all just change. It really does. It's crazy, really. But Moses Itauma is tremendously talented. He is trying to break Mike Tyson's record. I know a lot of people hate that. Well, I don't say hate it, but they don't like it when he starts bringing up the Mike Tyson record and stuff like that. And it's really weird because you see Moses Itauma and he goes in there against Marius Vac, drops Marius Vac and stops him in 2 rounds. And yeah, that's a fade of Marius Vac. Admittedly, it's not as good as Marius Vac was never that good even in his prime. But certainly Itauma didn't fight the best version of Marius Vac. But he is still a durable guy for the most part. He went the distance with Fraser Clark not too long ago, and Itauma was able to get rid of him. And in doing so, showed a lot of his talent, his combination punching, his speed, his footwork, his movement. A lot of good things there with Itauma. And I don't mean to sound harsh to Johnny Fisher or anyone like that, but you've people who are like, oh, what's Itauma done that's so good? He's no Johnny Fisher. It's like, mate, Marius Vac against Alan Babbage, that's a really competitive fight. You probably make Marius Vac favourite. Seriously. Because I doubt Babbage will be able to dent him. I'm sure he'd run out of gas pretty damn quick. And Alan Babbage had only one loss going into that fight, admittedly against Johnny Fisher. He was stopped in the first round by Rosansky, who in his next fight got stopped in a round by a Coley. And they act as though like that's more impressive, him knocking out Alan Babbage in a round, than Itauma going in there against Marius Vac and stopping him in 2. Vac had been stopped before, but he'd only been down once in his whole career, and Itauma was able to go and blast him out. I mean, it was impressive from what I saw, just to even see the talent on display. And then you see some of the other guys he's fought, albeit they're not great, but they're durable. They're taking him round, some of them. And Itauma is looking good. You're seeing a lot of talent there. So Itauma is a very, 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 very talented young fighter. And I think there's a lot of potential there. I know with Warren, look, I've said this about Itauma before and I'll say it again. He wants to break Mike Tyson's record. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I've always said that. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. If you go and you become world champion at 19 years old or 20 years and something, I can't remember exactly the age, but roughly 20 years of age. I think by May next year they need to have it done. So let's just say Itauma does do that. It's a lot of responsibility on a fighter of only 20 years old. And you got to bear in mind, like Itauma could have 13 years left in boxing, maybe more, because it's not uncommon for heavyweights to go well into their 30s. So could it be a case of Itauma, he shines bright very early on, but then fades, a bit like Prince Nazim before he's even 30? And bear in mind, he was a featherweight, Itauma was a heavyweight. Could that happen? Potentially. If he becomes champion, there's a lot of responsibility placed on him. He'll have to, it can't just be, even if you, say Usyk retires, he beats Fury and retires, and say those belts become fragmented, and he picks one up against whoever, you're then obliged to fight top guys. You look at Anthony Joshua, when he won his title off Charles Martin, it came too soon in his career. Like, I think everyone will admit he was fast-tracked. Not fast-tracked and going in there against Charles Martin, but to win a world title so soon. That before Charles Martin became champ, there was talk of European belts for Anthony Joshua, which was a good little path to go down. It became free against a weaker champion. They took it. They fought Eric Molina. They fought Dominic Brazil, not in that order, but you get what I mean. And then they were straight in with Klitschko a year later. There's a lot of pressure on those champions, a lot of responsibility, and you're obliged to fight dangerous, well, not necessarily dangerous mandatories. Some mandatories can be quite easy, but you get what I mean. You get a dangerous mandatory pushed upon you. You could as far as I'm concerned, you're a champion. You have an obligation to unify. You know, if you can, why not unify? So, I'm a boy of only, I was going to say man, but really a boy of 20 years old. It's a lot of responsibility to put on him. It really is. Whereas if you took a little bit more time with him, well, you could still move him reasonably quickly, but there's no reason why you couldn't have another 2 years, 3 years maybe, before he fights for a world title. I know with Frank Warren that it's obviously on his mind that if he was to break Mike Tyson's record, well, you have a pay-per-view starter. It's as simple as that. Like, if Itauma does break Mike Tyson's record, that's a pay-per-view star. No question about it. There's no question about it. Pay-per-view star right there, if he breaks Mike Tyson's record. But enough about that. We'll talk about the Joe Joyce potential fight. So yeah, I went on a long-winded one there about Itauma breaking records, but Itauma against Joe Joyce, I like that fight for Itauma. Joe Joyce is looking a bit jaded now, I think. And for me, I think this would be actually not bad matchmaking. It's already backfired on Frank Warren once. And bear in mind, Joe Joyce is a Queensberry fighter, but do you remember when he joined Queensberry first and they were building towards Dubois versus Joyce? They really almost treated Joe Joyce like the away fighter. It was an in-house fight, but you would swear Joe Joyce was with Matchroom. With the way Frank Warren was, with how kind of, I don't want to say antagonistic, well, you could argue sometimes it did seem like Paul Dempsey was being a little bit antagonistic with Joe Joyce on BT as it was back then. I remember when Dubois fought Gorman. I think Joe Joyce was either on that show or he was doing the punditry or something like that. And it almost seemed like they were just, deliberately trying to antagonise Joe Joyce because Dubois was their guy, even though Joyce was a Queensberry fighter. So it's already backfired once, but I don't know. I think with Joe Joyce, the way I've seen him lately, against Cash Ali, even in the win, and then obviously in the loss to Chisora, which I still can't believe I'm saying it, I think he's there for the taking. And someone like a Moses Itauma, young, fast, throws a lot of punches, seems to be a big puncher. Someone like Joe Joyce who's so easy to hit and is so slow of hand especially, so upright and never moves his head. Itauma could look $1 million letting those combinations go against Joe Joyce. He really, truly could. So Itauma versus Joyce, hey man, I'll watch it. I'll watch it. And I'd probably make Itauma favourite. I really would. Be interested to know what you think. Itauma versus Joyce. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. That would be an interesting fight. And if they did do it on the Fury Usyk show, hey, listen, we need to get that. Both undercards. Not Dubois versus Joshua, that's already done. Bivol versus Beterbiev and Fury versus Usyk too. We need to hear some stuff on the undercard. If they do that, I was already going to buy it, but any doubt, it's gone down. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Peace.